Welcome to the first episode of For the Record. I'm your host, Loudmouth Luke, and today for our first episode, we're looking at a pretty interesting album. We're looking at Ocala's favorite pop-punk band, A Day to Remember's latest release, Big Ole Album Volume 1. I recently got into A Day to Remember circa about summer of this year. It started with I asked my guitar teacher if he wanted to go see them because they're going to be at the Walmart Amp this weekend, which I am going, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And he was like, yeah. And so in preparation for this show, I started listening to a lot of their stuff, and I realized I was sleeping on a gold mine. This band is awesome. First and foremost, I think they're one of the most unique sounding bands I've listened to, at least in the scene of the 2010s Warped Tour era. Their style is known as this subgenre called Easycore, which is a mix of pop punk, metalcore, and hardcore elements. And on paper, for me, that I didn't think that would work, but it shockingly does. And I did know a couple songs beforehand, and I did like them, but once again, I didn't realize how much of a gold mine I was sleeping on. This band rocks. They have pop-punk bangers like Right Back at It Again and All Signs Point to Lauderdale, and brutal metalcore tracks like Mr. Highway's Thinking About the End and The Plot to Bomb the Panhandle, just to name a few. They're a recent favorite of mine, and they might even just be in my favorite bands, period, now. And some of their albums like Homesick and Common Courtesy have become personal favorites, and they have a lot of tracks that I spin on a regular basis. I did a huge Discog dive over the summer, again, in preparation for the show. So I think before we talk about Big Ole Album Volume 1, which is the newest A Day to Remember album, we have to talk about the predecessor. In 2021, A Day to Remember released You're Welcome, and it was not received very well. From what I could gather, they wanted to experiment with this project because, from a sound standpoint, everything that led up to it was very straightforward. It was very, style-wise, very consistent. And they wanted to experiment with some modern sounds and also mesh their older sound into it. And it just was such a mess. I listened to it over the summer, and I wanted to give it a fair chance because sometimes I feel like a lot of hate albums get are really blown out of proportion, especially in hindsight. But no, this one was not it. It is such a mess. It has this weird electronica, country sound at times. And there are a couple good tracks, I do really like Resentment and Last Chance to Dance, but even then, those don't hold a candle to tracks from Homesick or For Those Who Have Heart. It's not a good album, and if you're gonna listen to A Day to Remember, you can just skip that one, unless you really want to listen to it. But after the release of You're Welcome, they mainly just stuck to touring, although in the meantime between the two albums, they did release a couple singles, which did make it onto this album, and we'll get to those later, but I do have a couple things to say about those. I think the most interesting thing about this album was the way it was released. So, in February of this year, they released the album on physical media only. And from what I could gather, Jeremy McKinnon, the lead singer of A Day to Remember, said that they wanted to make it kind of an event because they felt like the way streaming has kind of just ruined album releases because people are like, oh, new album, it was good, and just kind of move on. He wanted the fans to check the album out first and foremost and let the tracks sit before they could go to streaming. And in hindsight, it's kind of a genius move because a lot of artists complain about how they don't get much from streaming. And this not only, probably gave the band some extra cash, but it also, again, let the fans kind of sit on it. Of the album thus far has been very mixed, to say the least, and in my opinion, it is kind of a mixed bag. It's got some high highs, it's got some low lows, but it does feel like a Day to Remember project for the most part. So let's disrespect our surroundings and look into A Day to Remember's Big Ole Album, Volume 1. So the first track from this album is Make It Make Sense, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. First and foremost, after You're Welcome, I think this song is a breath of fresh air because it's a heavy track from A Day to Remember. However, I think the opening line of "You want it, you got it" is just very spiteful and just reeks of like, you want us to play our heavy stuff that we're known for? Fine, here you go. Which that kind of rubs me the wrong way, and a lot of tracks on this album seem to have that issue, but we'll get to those later. With the song at hand, again, it's fine. It kind of has a lot of the problems I have with this album in the sense that, yeah, it is heavy. Yeah, it like doesn't feel as much of like a disjointed mess as You're Welcome was, but it just lacks a lot of the edge and the personality that a lot of their earlier work had. But with that being said, I do think it's a decent track and it's an okay way to start the album. The next track is Feedback, and oh boy, do I have a lot to say about Feedback. So this is probably the most divisive song A Day to Remember has released, at least at this point in their career. And the first few listens, I thought this song was all right. So first and foremost, this track is not directed at the people who didn't like You're Welcome. Jeremy McKinnon confirmed that. It was a track that they had like floating around circa like 2018. But with that said, I hate this song because, for one, it sounds like Nickelback. I don't want A Day to Remember to have this generic radio rock sound because what makes them so good was how unique their sound and their style was. And I can understand wanting to adapt to newer sounds because you don't want to be trapped in a box that bands like Breaking Benjamin are trapped in. But again, why this? And the thing that bothers me really the most about it, even more than the sound, is the way the lyrics are like, yeah, I don't want your feedback. And, you know, I bet it is very difficult to have a lot of people critique your work, at least harshly, because, you know, you probably worked really hard on writing it. So I can understand being defensive about it, but you're one of the biggest bands in your scene, and you've been around for over 20 years. I feel like you should expect to be criticized. And once again, why respond to them in this way? It's just mind-boggling that they thought this octane radio-sounding song would be a good response to critics. But yeah, I don't like it. Next song. The next song is Bad Blood, and this is the first one I think I actually really like on here. Now, first and foremost, no, this is not a Taylor Swift cover, but yeah, it's honestly a good song. It's very fun. It has this like edge to it, you know. It does sound a little generic, but it does feel like A Day to Remember to me. It's hard to explain, but it's just a fun song. It's got nice energy. It's got a pretty awesome bridge or breakdown near the end of the song. It's a good track, and I think you should check this one out. Next. The next track is All My Friends, and this one I have very conflicting feelings about. I checked this song out before I listened to Big Ole Album in full, which was around July, because it was the newest music video they had out at the time. And the first like month or so, I really liked this song. I don't know why, it just scratched my brain a certain way. But I later found out a lot of people have very mixed opinions about this song, in the same way that they have mixed opinions about Feedback, because it's just such a drastic turning point in their sound that is either gonna work for you or not. For me, I'm kind of split down the middle. I agree with a lot of people that this just doesn't sound like A Day to Remember. It sounds like a totally another band wrote it and they just happened to perform it. But despite that, I do think it's a fun song. It's energetic. It just reminds me of all the times I hang out with my friends. So I think the song succeeds in what it's trying to do. However, again, it really just lacks a lot of their personality. And I could see them doing something akin to this in the Homesick style. But with this weird, like, Nickelback-esque style, it's just really jarring. But again, it's a fine track and it's fun when I'm in a good mood. So let's get on to the next one. The next track is To the Death, and for me, this is a better track, but it's not really a highlight. First and foremost, I love the cool little like tremolo build up before the first like breakdown riff kicks in. That part's really cool, but it's more of just a straightforward metalcore song. It's good, it's fun to listen to, but it's nothing really to write home about. So next. Now we get to the first genuinely great song from Big Ole Album, Flowers. The first few times I listened to this album, it honestly didn't really stand out that much to me, but the more I paid attention to the lyrics, the more I really started to enjoy this track. It's about reaching out to people you care about, whether that be like your mom, your dad, maybe some old friends, before it's too late, and how sometimes that can feel really hard. It tells that really well, and it sometimes reminds me of a lot of people I haven't reached out to in a while that I want to talk to. In addition to the relatable subject, I love the way this song sounds too. Yeah, it's very pop punky, and that's always a side of A Day to Remember I prefer, and it honestly feels like them. It feels like a band finally getting back into the groove of what made them so great in the first place. It's just such a good track, and if you haven't listened to it, definitely check it out. It's a good one. The next track is LeBron, and this is another really great track, but it frustrates me because this is the song Feedback should have been. It's everything Feedback was trying to do, but in a way that A Day to Remember should have done a year ago. It's another very like pop punky sounding track like the last one, but it is so fun. It's got a bouncy riff. It's so catchy, and I like the little metaphor for LeBron's career in comparison to A Day to Remember is how they feel like they're considered overrated and their achievements haven't really been focused on enough. It makes for a really fun hype anthem, and I think all of you guys should definitely check this one out. The next song is Die For Me, and this is another weird one. So I found out that Ollie Sykes of Bring Me the Horizon helped write this song, and coincidentally enough, in some ways it kind of reminds me of some of the chiller tracks on Bring Me's Amo album. But with that said, how does it work on Day to Remember? I used to really like this one, and it's one that kind of gets worse and worse for me on each listen because it just sounds like a band, again, just trying to do a sound that just doesn't really fit them. But with all that said, it's a fine song. It's nothing really to write home about, but it's nothing offensive. So let's get to the next one. So the next song is Miracle, and this was technically the first single from the album. It was released a couple years after You're Welcome, and again, it's on the album, so I guess by default that makes it the first single. Regardless, this song's actually kind of good. I feel like this one should have opened instead of Make It Make Sense, because this does feel like a more proper response to the people who are like, oh, we want the heavy stuff, we want the heavy stuff. But it does still lack a little bit of their personality. It works better as a track than Make It Make Sense, and I think if they were gonna have that You Want It, You Got It intro, it would have worked a lot better here. I just feel like it needs a little bit more of that edge for me to truly love this song, but it's a good one. So, next. The next track is Same Team, and I think this is one of the better, heavier tracks. It's nothing really notable, but there's nothing like offensively bad about it. It's fine. It doesn't really do a lot for me. There's not really a lot to talk about for me. It's a good track. I do like the little build up before the chorus. It's got like a little like synth thing going on there, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, it's an okay track. One of the weaker ones, but it's nothing like offensively bad. So let's move on. The second to last song of the album, Silence. Yeah, based on the last two tracks, I honestly feel like this album's not really going out with a bang. This song's okay, but it just feels like kind of a nothing burger of a metal song. It has a cool little build up before the chorus, but that's really all it has going for me. It honestly sounds like a first take in a lot of places, because at least with a lot of the other songs, it seems like they tweaked it a lot. But here it just seems like, yeah, let's just straightforward, let's make a metal song. It wouldn't surprise me if this was one of the first tracks that they recorded, because it's really nothing special. So let's hope the last track's good. The last track of the album is Closer Than You Think, and man, does Big Ole Album go out with a big old bang. It's not the most energetic track, it's not the heaviest, but it has one of the biggest impacts on me lyrically. A lot to do with the subject matter. It's about trying to be there for a friend, but not really knowing what you can do, and just trying to be as supportive as you can. And it conveys that so perfectly, because we've all been there. We've always wanted to help people out with no real way how to. And honestly, the sound of the song is a vibe of cautious optimism. Like, yeah, you know, I'm really sad that my friend's hurt. I've been there before, but I'm still here for you. Just keep your head up. And that bridge near the end is that feeling of like, I'm content, I'm back, I am so glad to be alive. And it just has such a huge impact. And I'm so glad they chose this to be the final track. It's such a good song. And this is another one you should really check out. It's so good. Well, that was A Day to Remember's Big Ole Album Volume 1, and for me, it's a big ol' mixed bag. It's got some really good tracks, a couple duds, and mostly just forgettable tracks. I think in comparison to its predecessor, it's a major improvement, and it does show a lot of potential for what they can do next, but it does leave a lot to be desired. A lot of these songs feel like they're trying to be someone else, or they're trying to adapt to sounds that for the most part don't really fit them, and the ones that are more straightforward just lack a lot of their personality and edge. It feels like this album could have had a little more time in the oven, or maybe even just some retooling. I feel like it could have been almost as good as a lot of their earlier stuff if they just gave it a little more time, but here's to hoping Big Ole Album Volume 2 is better. Well, that wraps up the first episode of For the Record. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all have a good night, and I'll see you guys next week.